People paying money to see me in a 20x20 ring.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here amidst a two-part episode, a what if, one of those what if questions. This one was brought to us from you, the listeners. What if Shawn Michaels never got hurt in 1998 and stuck around and didn't leave? Well, I don't want to say didn't leave, but just stuck around for the remainder of his career.
And before we get on to the wrestling aspects of it, what I always question myself, does Shawn Michaels become a born-again Christian? Does he find time to find God when you're on the road for so long? Does he ever become the Shawn Michaels that we know today? Or does Shawn Michaels become like another member of the Clique, like Scott Hall, and completely destroy his career right before our very eyes?
I'm gonna reverse this question right back to you. I want to hear your answer first before I have to say what I have to say.
This is a tough one for me, because I don't want to put faith into a wrestling podcast, but I'm in agreement as a fellow Christian that things kind of happen for a reason.
Okay.
If Shawn Michaels didn't hurt his back, I think he has to find himself. Almost find his smile all over again, if you will. But this time be legit. For any Shawn Michaels fans, you know what I'm talking about. Shawn Michaels was on a destructive path. There was no doubt about that. I think even at that point in his life, he was on that destructive path. And it didn't change right away. You look at 98, 99, it didn't change. It didn't change for him right then and there. You look at a guy like Triple H, who was a good friend of his, or is a good friend of his. Even he pretty much just said, I love you, but I can't do this anymore. And he wiped his hands with them. Not out of, I hate you, or this and that. But he's got to live his own life. And there was a lot of bridges that Shawn was burning at such a rapid pace that eventually was going to catch up with him, whether he was in wrestling or not. So I would say he does. I think a lot of what he becomes eventually happens, but I think it happens for totally different reasons.
Okay.
Again, Shawn Michaels, when he left, you're still talking 98, 99. It wasn't like he automatically became this Christian wrestler, or Christian man, I should say, and did everything for the Lord. He was still very much for himself. He got the tough love that he needed, and he also found his eventual wife, or at least that's what I remember. Okay. That's still debatable. But besides the point, though, getting married, having kids, all that, I think, I like to think that still happens for him. But that's just my opinion. Again, I don't like to bring religion into this podcast, but as a man of faith myself, I kind of agree with what he says, where it kind of all happens at some point for a reason. But that's just my opinion.
To me, it doesn't matter whether you bring religion into this or not. That doesn't affect me, as long as it's relevant to what we're talking about.
Sure.
With that being said, does he become a man of God? I think so. I think so because I've seen friends, I've seen family, I've seen people in the public, celebrities who go down destructive paths, self-destructive paths in life, and you eventually hit rock bottom. No pun intended.
Sure.
And it's one of two things. You hit rock bottom and you're dead, or you hit rock bottom and you have nowhere to go but up, and you start that long road back to to a stable life or somewhat stable life. And I think with the way he was going, it would have been a situation where he hits rock bottom no matter what happens, and he tries to make amends with himself and the people around him, and it takes time. So I still think he gets married to his current wife. I still think all that happens. I just think it happens at a different time. I probably sooner, for my money.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably sooner. And you and I were watching footage of him talk about the weeks leading up to WrestleMania 14.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he had big lapses in his memory.
Yeah.
From just, all the booze and whatnot. And he couldn't remember certain stuff. And it was pretty interesting to hear him talk like that. And then I had pointed out to you that a lot of what he was saying lines up with what Bruce Pritchard was saying on the Something to Wrestle With podcast. And to hear two different people tell the same story, more or less, it's kind of sobering.
Yeah.
It's kind of sobering to like, oh, well, shit, yeah, he was erratic. He was not listening. He was, being defiant. He was drinking himself to death. He was, snorting his fucking mind away,
Right.
All those things. And, I think it would have happened a lot sooner because there would have been necessarily no situation to put him in check. That him hurting himself, it was kind of like a hurdle he forgot to jump.
Yeah.
So it slowed him down. It's interesting question.
To me, that was always the most intriguing question about Shawn Michaels is who essentially Michael Hickenbottom would become with or without that time off. Mm-hmm. It leads to another question, and that involves other guys besides Shawn Michaels, and that's the guys who would be trained by Shawn Michaels. So in 1999, Shawn Michaels, along with Rudy Boy Gonzalez, they opened up a wrestling school based out of San Antonio, Texas, called the Texas Wrestling Academy. And there is a decent amount of names that were trained at the school. And we have the likes of Hernandez, Matt Bentley, who spent some time in TNA, Paul London, Lance Cade, Brian Kendrick, which is a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And with all due respect to the other ones. And, of course, most people know this by now, but I'm calling him by his real name here. Bryan Danielson, American Dragon, were all trained at this wrestling school. Obviously, if you are in the wrestling business, especially a full-time, a high-profile wrestler like Shawn Michaels, there's a good chance you're not opening up a school that you're going to be training at.
Yeah.
I mean, you might open up a school, you might pay for it, but you're not making your 9 to 5 there.
Right.
How does this affect the talent that goes through that school? Does Bryan Danielson leave Aberdeen, Washington, to San Antonio, Texas, the day after his high school graduation to go train, or does he go somewhere else?
And that could be said about all the guys you just mentioned. All the guys
too, yeah. Or or does he rethink wrestling altogether? Was that the reason why he went with Shawn Michaels? Or because that's a far drive.
Yeah,
Aberdeen, Washington to San Antonio, Texas is a pretty far drive, especially for an 18-year-old kid. But does he not go there anymore, or does he go somewhere else? I mean, what happens to guys like that, to Brian Kendrick and Bryan Danielson and everybody else I named, if Shawn Michaels doesn't open up that school? Again, it's like the Triple H thing. It's like it's a good thing that he leaves. Mm-hmm. He did more good, it seems, at this point.
Yeah.
With all due respect to Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
I mean, even for himself.
it's such an odd situation, man. You don't. It's also one of those, like, you don't necessarily expect it to turn out this way.
Right.
You hear about guys leaving wrestling, and it's like, okay, whatever. But here you have, he's now responsible for at least a few superstars that have had a lasting impression on the business.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's like one of those situations where next guy up and they score a touchdown. I mean, he goes back to the MSG situation in '96 when Triple H was scheduled to win that King of the Ring, and as one of his first punishments was, well, you're not winning anymore.
mm-hmm.
What happens? Do we ever hear Austin 316?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? It's one of those weird things where it's like, fuck, you don't want to become one of those shows again, but it's like, is there a thing called destiny? Like, or is fate? Is fate really like a real thing? But yeah, what say you? Like, what about these guys? And what about their potential futures without Shawn Michaels at that school?
I don't know off the top of my head whether they were hell-bent on attending this particular school because of Shawn Michaels,
Mm-hmm.
or it was just, hey, there's a wrestling school opening up and I want to go, you know. But, you know, like it or not, he's responsible for Bryan Danielson. He's responsible for Brian Kendrick and a few others. So it I don't know. It's just really interesting to see that his tutelage had such an effect on these guys over the years. And it could have all just as easily not had happened had he not gotten hurt.
I mean, you look at, you can even catch this on Hidden Gems in the WWE Network. But Bryan Danielson got his first look with WWE as a student of the Texas Wrestling Academy because of Shawn Michaels. You got to remember, Shawn Michaels obviously had pull with the company.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "Hey, let me have my guys come in and just do a couple dark matches, take a look at them," and they did. I mean, I think there's an early match with Brian Kendrick versus American Dragon, as he called himself, that back then, and it's on like it's a dark match, but it's like right before Raw or SmackDown, if I'm not mistaken, and they wouldn't have, whether you are a fan of WWE or not, they wouldn't have that kind of exposure had they not have been at the school.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody, even if they're a legend of professional wrestling, can say, "Hey, Vince, I got a couple guys, like, you mind letting them go out there in front of a live crowd and have a match?" "Oh, yeah, anything for you, Sean." Everybody has that pull.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, let's say they were trained by somebody that was no longer affiliated with WWE, but a huge wrestling star nonetheless. You know, let's say they were trained by a Kevin Nash.
Bret Hart.
Or Bret Hart. There you go. Bret Hart's can't go to Vince and say, "Hey, my boys." They'd be like, who the fuck are you to come here and ask me anything? So that kind of exposure, even though, yeah, I get it. Those guys spend a lot of time in independence, and especially Bryan Danielson. But that first exposure to be trained by somebody with that kind of pull, and then they have that kind of exposure with the WWE crowd, WWE talent that's back there. You know, I'm sure somebody had to pull them aside and say, "This is what you did wrong. This is what you did right." You know, and man, I mean, to not have that, yeah, you can still have a successful career, but you really put yourselves in the driver's seat as far as your future is concerned. So I think you and I are in agreement that nobody's career is necessarily over before it starts. But it's a really interesting concept of, like, where does Bryan Danielson go to train? Does it take him longer to get into the business? Does it take him longer to get noticed by, Ring of Honor?
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
all good questions.
And that's one of those things that it leads you to wonder, how does a kid from Washington get exposed in early 2000 anyways? especially, days when internet's barely a thing, and at least not what it is today, and, independent wrestling isn't what it is today.
Right.
You could be wrestling in your local gymnasiums out in Washington and never be known, So to have Shawn Michaels and to have that name, again, it pretty much says you're somebody without ever being somebody. So, yeah, it's one of those interesting concepts. Shawn Michaels' career has to end, or at least for the time being, put on a long pause in order for somebody else to have an opportunity. Multiple people in this case. Because you look at Brian Kendrick, Daniel Bryan, yes, I'm calling him Daniel Bryan now, Paul London, Lance Cade. Those are all guys that have been in WWE, been champions in WWE. Yep. So, I mean, it's I don't know about you, but if somebody made a podcast about me or a show about me, the what if I wasn't there, it's almost like we're saying, hey, Shawn, like, it's a good thing you weren't there. Like, I don't know, man. It'd be kind of weird for me. It's just like, oh, it's a good thing I left. So,
and again, like, that's not always the case with people, especially in wrestling. But for what as fate would have it,
right?
Like, that's just kind of how things have worked out. Like, every time he's gone away, something positive has happened for other people. So, but speaking about it that way, it's almost like karma.
Yeah.
If you believe in karma, what you put out there comes back to you tenfold, and he was putting a lot of bad shit out there, so it kind of makes sense that when he did leave, other people were able to capitalize in a positive way off of it. So,
it's like a wonderful life.
Yeah. That's how I would book all three Foleys. They would be his guardian angels.
I want to wrestle again.
All right. Final thoughts on Shawn Michaels not leaving. Could you loosely book a year? How would you like to see him in that year if he didn't get hurt?
We kind of already started with part one.
Yeah, we did. In part one, we started.
I guess let's finalize it.
But we're talking about April of 1998 through April of 1999. So we're assuming he stayed healthy after the Royal Rumble. He did make the In Your House No Way Out of Texas pay-per-view. That brings us to the end of March at WrestleMania. He still faces Stone Cold at WrestleMania 14. But from then on out...
He still drops the title.
He still drops the title.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Stone Cold Steve Austin was too hot. He was too much of a juggernaut to not win the title, even for this scenario. I still think he's a major part of the rest of 1998, at the very least.
Right. So, yeah, because I asked you the question. I mean, you were older
Thanks.
than I was in 1998, and I just didn't remember if DX had did something to lose the crowd. Because I know they were a heel faction. I get that part, but they were super over, especially in 97. It's like, what changed? And what changed was Austin challenged for the title.
Yep.
So that's how over Austin was. So it makes sense it makes zero sense not to give it to him at the peak of his popularity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those examples where WWE did the right thing, gave the title to Austin, and the rest is history. But the rest is not necessarily history for Shawn Michaels, because how do you book him for an entire year? And I guess we start at...
I'll tell you what. Let's make it easier on ourselves, and you can fill in the blanks as much as possible. Let's do. We'll just do every pay-per-view. One pay-per-view a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. If that's the case, then we would start with Unforgiven pay-per-view.
Okay.
You and I have already kind of talked about potential opponents. One being Mike Tyson. The other one would be Dude Love, who ended up going on to face Stone Cold. Without opening too many can of worms, we'll let everybody else decide. Well, if Dude Love faces Shawn Michaels, who does Stone Cold face? We'll let you guys worry about that. I'll let WWE worry about that. For the sake of fantasy booking, I like Dude Love in this case here. I think he's a great distraction, because it would be the same situation with Stone Cold. It made no sense. I mean, as far as like just it came out of nowhere, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was very clear that Shawn Michaels was the rematch was going to happen on Unforgiven, which would have been a mistake. Sorry, Greensboro, but it just would have been a mistake to do it that fast. I think Dude Love had enough charisma at that point to have a rivalry with Shawn Michaels. And obviously, as far as in-ring performer, Mick Foley's a good enough wrestler to go in the ring against Shawn Michaels. I think it would have been a fitting distraction for Shawn in order for him to not challenge for the championship right away.
I agree. I don't want him challenging for the title right away. I've always been a fan of the longer storyline, as long as it's done right. And you would have that potential here to book Shawn Michaels in a future championship match, but make it worthwhile, And so I don't know about Mike Tyson. Something for me says get the most out of that situation as possible. And while a lot of it did culminate at WrestleMania 14, I can't help but think they should have kept Tyson around for at least one more pay-per-view. Now, I'm not saying it had to be HBK versus HBK versus Mike Tyson 1-on-1.
Yeah.
But definitely, whether it be a tag match or some form or fashion, get him to maybe even interfere in a match with Shawn Michaels, but have it end at that pay-per-view.
Right.
So if this is Unforgiven we're talking about, whatever's going on between Mike Tyson and Shawn Michaels, get it over with at the end of that pay-per-view, at the very most. I do like what you talked about with Dude Love. I agree with you. He definitely had the charisma and the talent to be a part of that situation. And regardless of whether Shawn Michaels was erratic or not, there's one thing I think everybody agrees on at this point, including Shawn Michaels. I think he said it best. You get him to the ring and everything's going to be okay. So, like, no matter what other bullshit he was putting everybody else through or what was going on, the moment he stepped in the ring, he did what he was supposed to do. He didn't go into business for himself.
Right.
He did what he was supposed to do. So if you're putting him up against Dude Love at Unforgiven, he's going to do whatever he's got to do to get them both over.
Right.
So I agree.
I'm going to add one more guy to that list for Unforgiven.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only because of what happens in the immediate future that would culminate to the next pay-per-view, which is Over the Edge. And that's Owen Hart. Owen Hart at WrestleMania unsuccessfully challenged Triple H for the European Championship. Of course, China, she threw the dust or whatever and started to slaughter his face, and then still low blow Owen Hart. You have a situation where you have a clearly pissed off Owen Hart, and he's going at the Triple H. And you can build out a situation where Shawn Michaels is in the room or in the ring at the same time, and he's pretty much like, I don't have time for this pint size. Like, we got bigger fish to fry. Owen Hart takes exception to what he says, and then they get into it one-on-one match at Unforgiven. Owen Hart later joins the Nation of Domination, and then, of course, DX forms an army that you and I said probably still happens. Sean Waltman didn't just jump ship just like that. I mean, he was fired from WCW.
Right, he was fired.
He was going to come back to WWE by way of the Click.
Mm-hmm.
So more likely he was going to be a DX member.
Yeah.
It makes sense to still have Road Dogg and Billy Gunn in there still. It leads to the Unforgiven pay-per-view. Again, you want to still have distraction. Well, do a faction war. Which is essentially what they did at Over the Edge. It was a 6-man tag. It was the Nation versus D-Generation X. Simple as that. Just do that. You can still be entertaining. and you still have a purpose for Shawn Michaels that isn't for that title.
This one, I agree with a lot of what you said, but not everything, and I'll tell you why. Because for me, where it starts to bridge out and be different is when it concerns Owen Hart. Because here we are post Montreal Screwjob.
Okay.
And that has never really been...
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's never really been finished. You know, it has all the loose ends haven't been tied up, and that includes Owen Hart.
Right.
You know, you know, like it or not, Bret is his brother, and he took Bret's side, whether he was right or whether he was wrong.
Right, right.
So that remained unfinished business. For them to step in the ring, I would much rather see that be the reason for the match, as opposed to a faction war.
Okay.
So I would purposely.
I'm actually better with that, anyways.
I would purposely, have it booked to where, sure, it starts off as a faction war, but it clearly and quickly becomes personal between Owen Hart and Shawn Michaels, to the point where Owen's like, well, you know what, you screwed my brother, now I'm gonna screw you.
You think Owen will work with Shawn Michaels? I forgot all about that. As I'm booking this.
There's a lot of speculation as to how Owen felt, whether he even wanted to stay with the company at the time. You get people that said yes, you get people that said no. Obviously, he didn't go anywhere, and you know what? There's always that chance at a sibling rivalry. So who's to say? Again, I'm just speculating here, but who's to say Owen wasn't glad that Bret left?
I mean, it's a situation like Triple H and Shawn Michaels here.
Mm-hmm. So,
Interesting.
If that's the case, then yeah. And they could still do the storyline, hey, you screwed my brother, now I'm going to screw you. Because it kind of answers two questions at once. It kills two birds with one stone. He's able to step into the limelight now that Bret's not there and take that main eventer role. And he's also able to tie up loose ends with the Montreal Screwjob.
Yeah, at least for WWE's storyline purposes are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point with Owen Hart, because it goes back to '94 with how great Owen Hart was. Not that he was bad in the other years, but like that was his breakout year, and it was still overshadowed by everything that Bret did. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense. It makes sense. But either way, Owen Hart is easily a possible opponent for Shawn Michaels.
Yes.
For these 2 months, no matter how you want to slice it up. So I think there's a good option for you. Again, keep Shawn Michaels away from that title for the time being.
Yeah,
that's the key.
As long as we're fantasy booking this in this entire year concerning Shawn Michaels, that is by far the most concrete concept for me. Keep him away from that title, and I'll tell you why when we get to the end of the year.
Okay, so you want him away from him for the whole year. So
if possible, yes.
If possible. So that leads to June 28th, 1998, a date you and I have talked about on the show. It is the King of the Ring.
Ah, yes.
The
King of the Ring 98.
So, obviously, headlined by Undertaker versus Mankind, Hell in a Cell. Main evented by Kane and Austin in the First Blood match, which was essentially another Hell in a Cell match. That's the way I look at it.
Yep.
Where do you put a guy like Shawn Michaels in the sense of all this? DX is kind of doing their own thing. You have X-Pac and Owen Hart facing each other. The Outlaws are facing the New Midnight Express. And Triple H is not on the card. Yeah, Triple H is not on the card. So, where do you see Triple H and Shawn Michaels at?
Triple H doesn't concern me here. He's not on the card.
Yeah, where do we keep Shawn Michaels at?
Yeah, I think, for my money, I think Shawn Michaels is a participant in the King of the Ring tournament.
You think so?
I think so.
Now, why would Shawn go essentially backwards. That's the way a lot of people look at it.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I think for whatever it's worth, no matter whether he had Vince's ear or not, the Hell in the Cell between The Undertaker and Mankind, it was its own entity. It was its own beast. You don't change that. That's too ripe of a situation to be fucked with.
Right.
Just let it happen as it is. Austin versus Kane for the title in the First Blood match. Again, for me, if I'm booking this, you keep Michaels away from that title, and you have, Austin again is too much of a juggernaut. You let him face other people for the time being, and that leaves the only other thing for that pay-per-view is a King of the Ring match, a qualifying match. So I'm not sure who I would take out of the tournament to replace, for HBK to replace, but yeah, for my money, he would be part of the tournament.
All right, so if that's the case, then does he win the tournament?
Yes.
Well, as far as the semifinals are concerned, you have Ken Shamrock versus Jeff Jarrett, and The Rock versus Dan Severn.
There you go. You read my mind? Is that why you're laughing?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
As you see him in the ring.
Take Jeff Jarrett out. Fuck Jeff Jarrett.
I thought you meant The Rock.
No.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page. As soon as I said Jeff Jarrett, I was like, I'm not reading the other two guys' names.
Yes, I would love to see HBK versus Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, and that's the match that you and I talked about in part one of the show that we wanted to see. And then that would lead to a match with either The Rock or Dan Severn. Are you okay with it being Shawn Michaels versus The Rock?
Yes.
For the King of the Ring finals?
Yes.
For the first time ever?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's a good starting point. They meet in this tournament, and so it's very it's semi-random because it's a tournament. So it isn't like they have their own beef or quarrel before this. And this is where it starts.
Right. Well, that leads to a very interesting concept because The Rock is also in the picture of the Intercontinental Championship. You beat The Rock. Rock doesn't like that too much. Rock comes in, talks his shit, maybe gets involved in one of your matches or two, and now Shawn Michaels and The Rock have a bit of rivalry here. And we're really stepping on dangerous territory, though, because I know we said leave it up to the rest of the industry to worry about it, leave it up to the rest of the fan base. But I think you know where I'm going with this. July and August, put them up there with potentially with The Rock. Do that, but that really excludes Triple H. And I guess it's not our problem for the sake of this podcast.
For the sake of this podcast, it's not our problem.
Is The Rock going 1-on-1 against The Rock for the Intercontinental Championship at Fully Loaded? And then I ask the question again, is he doing that ladder match? And you already answered that question, but I'm going to ask you again.
Yeah, I said no. I did say no. As long as he's healthy, and as long as this whole Rock versus HBK thing started at King of the Ring, then yes, do the ladder match.
Right.
Because now you have that build. You have that time to build. And it makes a little more sense.
Even with Shawn Michaels being a douchebag at this point. Let's say he still is a douchebag.
Yeah, because you have him being a douchebag, and you have The Rock, who's really not taking anybody's shit.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too because he's always been known to kind of be in Vince's ear in his own right.
Yeah, it would have been. That's compelling TV for me.
Who gets over?
This is what's difficult for me through this entire 2-part episode that we're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
It's HBK's attitude.
Yeah.
Because we have two.
And that's not a cop out.
No, it's not.
I want to know that. That's not a cop out answer.
It's his. it's his attitude that is the biggest if in all of this.
Right.
Because
that's how it's always been.
Yeah, if I'm the one who has complete control over this situation, Shawn Michaels becomes the answer to the WWF's, like, he solves his own problems.
Right.
But obviously history has dictated otherwise. But for me, if I'm booking this and everything is going the way I want it to, Shawn Michaels essentially becomes the equivalent of what Tanahashi is for New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Okay.
He realizes he knows his role, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And he does whatever he needs to do to get talent over. And by doing so, he gets himself over.
Yeah.
So that's the Shawn Michaels I need to have right now. At this juncture in time.
At the very least, what I hope would happen is somebody, maybe Vince himself, says, "Look, this is what we have on doing. Can you get this kid over? Get this kid over. I owe you one." Because I look at this, you and I are on the same mindset. I hate when people say when someone is a world champion, they should never be Intercontinental champion again. That doesn't make any sense. You go backwards, and that's not the case at all.
No,
that title means so much more.
It's still a title.
Yeah, it's a title. Yeah,
the alternative is not having a title.
Exactly.
So
like once you win the world title, no matter what company you work for, you should never win another championship ever again.
You know what? That's a whole other episode, though, because as far as I'm concerned, that's a WWE frame of mind.
Yeah.
That you don't really hear about that anywhere else.
Well, that's what happens when you have bookers that look at his title as objects.
Yes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's not go that route. But you have this, and because we are talking about WWE, you might have a wrestler here that says, "I'm not doing this. Why do I need the Intercontinental title? I'm not. What is the point of this? Do me this favor, or do me this. You get this kid over. And I owe you one. And you just pretty much got to trust me on that. And maybe that's the only way that this works out with that kind of asshole mentality. He's got to get something over with himself in order to get this kid over. Because this kid, although he's gaining popularity, he's not Stone Cold. Where no matter what you do, he's the loudest reaction in the room all the time. So Stone Cold made sense, even with Shawn Michaels departing. There's a part of me that feels that The Rock would have a little bit of a hard time getting over with Shawn Michaels.
I think the reality of this situation, unfortunately, is Shawn Michaels is still self-destructing at this point. And I think Vince would have been like, look, it isn't a situation of, hey, do me this solid and then I'll owe you one. I think in reality it was, hey, Shawn Michaels, you're fucking up, so guess what? You're being punished. You're going to get the Rock over.
Yeah.
That seems much more plausible to me.
So they have a ladder match at SummerSlam. Are we saying Rock wins that title?
Yes.
You think they trade it back and forth? You think Shawn Michaels wins it in July? Rock wins it back in...
For my money,
August?
yeah. I think they trade it back at least once.
That's good enough for me. I don't need to see them do any more than that.
Yeah, you don't want it to go too long.
So, the next pay-per-view... So, we're so far we're booked through August.
Mm-hmm.
September leads to Breakdown. This one's tricky for me because I hate how this ends. So, it's Kane and The Undertaker challenging Stone Cold in a triple threat match. Kane and The Undertaker cannot pin each other. Again, this is a McMahon versus Austin feud, so he's stacking the odds against Austin, whatever. And Kane and The Undertaker both pin Austin at the same time. Instead of making them co-champions, Vince McMahon declares the championship as vacant. And we have no champion for 2 months. Not a fan of that. But anyways, that's not what I'm talking about. We're here to talk about, I should say. You also have The Rock, Ken Shamrock, and Mankind in a number one contenders match for the WWF Championship. Of course, in this case, if that is the case, then The Rock, would he still even be in that match because he's the Intercontinental Champion?
No, he wouldn't.
Okay. So, does Shawn Michaels take that place?
Shawn Michaels takes that place.
But he doesn't win. Because if he wins, he's got to fight for the title at some point.
For me, he wins.
Okay.
For me, he wins, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because now you have him win this number one contendership, and you start to build towards WrestleMania.
Yeah.
So
he has a match against... Well, who would he have a match against, though? I don't remember who The Rock faced.
It doesn't matter. Me,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off
Go
here,
ahead.
but I'm reading here. The Rock was not given... Rock won the match, the real match. The Rock was not given a match for the title, so it never took place.
Never took place.
Yeah, so maybe it could work after all. Shawn Michaels owed his title shot.
Yeah, he's owed the title shot, and now you start building towards WrestleMania.
Okay.
You don't. Again, you keep him away from Austin. You start to tease, but you keep him away. We're still in September.
Yeah.
We still have months to go. But this is where you started. This is where you plant the seed.
That's cool with me. I if that's the case, then we gotta keep this bullshit.
Yeah, keep
finish.
the train running. Yep.
Man, you're doing this to me. All right, so because I always hated this finish. I remember watching Cheater Box, ladies and gentlemen, and feel like I got ripped off. Like I want my money back. That I didn't pay for this pay-per-view. And then I didn't remember about what happened with The Rock, as far as winning the number one contendership. But yeah, if he doesn't get the title match because there's no champion, that works out in the sense that he's essentially an uncrowned champion in his mind because he never even got a shot.
Yes.
There's that can start up a whole nother can of worms with him versus McMahon that we can go into.
I would love for it to work where Shawn Michaels wins the number one contendership against Mankind and Ken Shamrock.
Yes.
And then he goes to interfere in Austin's match.
Right.
But because this is a match where Vince McMahon is stacking the odds against Austin, he makes it impossible for Austin to win. HBK goes to help Austin win, but fails. And so you have him like, hey, I came to save your ass because I want to face you for the title. I want my rematch.
Right.
But that wasn't able to happen because of Vince McMahon. So now you have Vince McMahon picking on Shawn Michaels and throwing guys at Shawn Michaels, thereby keeping him away from Austin.
That's a good point. The only issue that I see there is that you got to remember that Austin was the guy that Vince wanted the title off of. I don't know how pissed off he would be saying that he accomplished that goal, regardless of who won or lack thereof. Stone Cold was no longer WWF champion.
I would still make it work. I would still make it if that's how it went. If Vince wanted the belt off of Austin and that's what he got, now you could easily say Shawn Michaels went to go help Stone Cold keep the belt so that he could face him in a rematch, and because that didn't happen, you could switch it up, and now Shawn Michaels is kind of, instead of Vince giving the business to Shawn Michaels is giving the business to Vince.
Right. So that leads to the October pay-per-view, which took place in Chicago, by the way, or Rosemont. Judgment Day, which became a May pay-per-view after '98. Little fun fact. The main event was Kane versus The Undertaker for the vacant WWF Championship. Stone Cold Steve Austin was special guest referee, with the stipulation that he must crown a new champion or he would be fired.
I believe I was at this pay-per-view.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
You were?
I believe so.
So, if this is the case, is Shawn Michaels booked on this card? Because I guess we can give him a pay-per-view off if we book it the right way.
Yeah, we could.
Could do that. You give him the pay-per-view off. Does he cause shenanigans in this match somehow, some way? Or do you give him like a juggernaut to face and punishment to what you said about him and Vince McMahon?
If he's trying to give the business to Vince McMahon, then I see him being booked on the card.
Okay.
It just makes sense. Who he would face, I'm not sure.
You can make it work.
You know,
I could see some kind of handicap match at this point.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of like bigger factions in '98 too. They weren't really good. You know, Los Boricua and DOA and Truth Commission. They all could kind of play that role.
Yeah.
You know, NOD was broken up at this point.
Okay.
So that's not really a thing. But besides, they're also fighting each other for this pay-per-view. Mark Henry and The Rock are facing each other. You know,
okay.
It's a disbanded faction, and of course, DX is your own thing. You know, unless you want to start booking some rivalries between them. All the oddities are a thing. But yeah, nothing crazy in particular as far as what you could do. But I'm sure you can find a tag team somewhere. You know, I know the Brood just formed. I don't know if the Ministry of Darkness were formed yet or forming.
I'm not sure.
But if that was the case, I always saw as Midian and Viscera as like that tag team, but I don't think they were a tag team yet.
Okay. But
yeah, I guess it could work. It could work that way. But for all intents and purposes, not most exciting Shawn Michaels booking there. But I'm gonna humor you right now and the WrestleMania because I like that. I looked at it because it's WWE. It's get it out as fast as possible. The SummerSlam would be like I would be okay with SummerSlam, not like April, not Unforgiven.
Yeah. But
like SummerSlam being okay to do it. But you know the other matches were great. It's just that October one was kind of meh.
Mm-hmm.
But that's fine because Survivor Series is next. St. Louis, Missouri. Obviously, the big deal here is the tournament.
Yes.
For the vacant title. Stone Cold is fired because they didn't crown a new champion, so he's fired. I'm using air quotes here, ladies and gentlemen. Besides the tournament matches, there's a match for the women's championship, a match for the tag team championship. Which obviously, well, you know, the women's title I don't see him being a part of, and the tag team I don't see him being a part of.
Right.
So it only makes sense if you're going to book him in a match to put him in the tournament. You're nodding your head, so I'm assuming he's in the tournament.
He's in the tournament
okay.
Because let's face it, Vince McMahon is a prick.
Yeah.
And he could have easily been like, you know what? I don't care if you're the number one contendership. You know what? That's the match we would have had him booked for October. He would have had to defend his number one contendership.
Okay.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know why I don't remember this, but Stone Cold was in the tournament. He was in the daily tournament. But obviously we keep Shawn Michaels and Stone Cold away from each other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Stone Cold makes it all the way to... Where's he lose at? The semifinals. The semifinals is Mankind, Stone Cold, The Rock, and The Undertaker. Shawn Michaels get eliminated earlier tonight. You call him earlier because it's a 4-round tournament.
Right.
So you can call some kind of shenanigans earlier.
Yeah.
To get him out.
Get him out early. That way he could possibly interfere later. That works for me.
Yeah.
He still has his number one contendership because, you know, he won at the pay-per-view last time. And it wasn't on the line for Survivor Series.
Right.
Yeah. I would book it like that.
So that's Survivor Series. Huh?
Yeah. That's Survivor Series.
So that leads to the last pay-per-view of 1998. Sorry, UK, but we are skipping Capital Carnage.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Sorry, we love you, UK. We do. NXT UK saw a debut show.
Did you?
Fucking killer. Watch
Sweet.
it. Check it out.
I gotta check it out.
But leads to the final US pay-per-view of 1998, and that is Rock Bottom. The Rock, of course, wins the heavyweight title, the WWF Championship, whatever you want to call it. He would defend that title against Mankind at that pay-per-view. Stone Cold went one-on-one against The Undertaker in a Buried Alive match for the right to compete in the 1999 Royal Rumble match. Now, you said keep him away from Austin.
Yes.
You know what my question is. Did you mean just Austin, or do you mean that title? Do we see Shawn Michaels versus The Rock for that title?
Keep this. See, this is where it gets tricky because you want.
Well, you're booking for a whole year.
Yeah,
it's
you want what I want is for Austin versus Michaels, the rematch at WrestleMania 15. That's what I'm shooting for.
Okay.
So if we're factoring him into this, now it's like him and Austin are in opposite situations.
Right.
Where Austin's facing The Undertaker in a Buried Alive match, when it should probably be Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker in a Buried Alive match.
Okay.
And have The Rock face
Austin for the title. Because you're not getting a WrestleMania now.
Right.
I mean, this also works out, too, because you start the year and you end the year with Michaels versus Undertaker.
Mm-hmm.
And a specialty match, too.
And a specialty match at that, yeah.
A little keynote here, too. I don't think it changes anything, but the New Age Outlaws defended the tag titles against the Corporation to a Big Boss Man and Ken Shamrock. Shawn Michaels was in the corner of the Corporation, so you also saw a little bit of turning away from, obviously, he wasn't a full-time member, but turning his back on D-Generation X.
DX, right.
So, I'm assuming for right now, we're not going to go that route.
No.
Okay. I like, well, as far as matches, I'm sticking with you because I love these matches. So that's why I'm not really putting up much of a fight, because it's like if the matches are good, what do I care? Like, do it. See, like if you and I ran a company, it would just be like, oh, that should be cool. Like, I'll worry about the rest of that shit later. Like, does it make sense? I don't know. They're gonna put on at least a 4-star match. I'm down for it. But yeah, it's like, man, why do you even work here? Like, you. No, but seriously, in all seriousness, like I made my point very clear. I was okay with SummerSlam. I want to see if you can. It looks like you're going to go all the way to WrestleMania with no issues. So. You got 2 pay-per-views left, my friend. Royal Rumble 1999 took place, and your title match was the I Quit match, the infamous I Quit match, in front of Mick Foley's kids. The Rock versus Mankind. Of course, you had the Royal Rumble match, as you do every year.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn Michaels is still #1 contender. Does he even have to compete in a Royal Rumble match? Is he going to compete in a Royal Rumble match? Or do you put him somewhere else? Is this where you start to see a divide in D-Generation X? Or do you...
I think it's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
I think you want that divide between him and DX because, for my money, he perceives DX as like baggage now. Like, you guys didn't help me keep my title the first time. Why would I want you around for my rematch?
Right.
Okay, that's where I want that story to go. Who wins the Rumble that year?
Vince McMahon wins the Rumble.
There you go. Keep Vince the Royal Rumble winner. So now he would sit there and say, now I have a shot at the title, but Michael still has the #1 contendership. So there you go. That's the next logical step for me is HBK versus Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
For the #1 contendership.
Would you do that at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre?
Yeah.
I got it. All right. So just so you know, for storyline purposes, you got to keep Austin in that title mix. That's how Austin gets into that match, to that main event. That was his only shot at getting a title match. Remember that year was the Royal Rumble. And he loses the match via controversy. He talks McMahon into giving him that match anyways.
Okay.
A rematch, which was in that cage, in which Austin wins the cage match and it goes on to WrestleMania to challenge The Rock, who is the corporate champion. Still. So that's somewhere I caution you.
All right, let me backtrack.
Okay.
So this is what we'll do.
All right.
So Vince still wins the Rumble.
Okay.
Austin still weasels his way into a title shot, but HBK now taken out of that picture. He still has the number one contendership, but the moment he tries to test Vince about getting a title shot, this is where DX and HBK completely part ways. And that's how you keep the number one contendership on Shawn Michaels and tie up any loose ends between him and DX. If you're asking me what kind of match I would like to see, I would like to have him run a gauntlet through DX members.
Okay.
Not necessarily all in one match, but that would be the next couple bookings for him. If you're not going to do it as one gauntlet match.
So St. Valentine's Day Massacre is then booked in how?
What's the card?
You got Mankind versus The Rock in the last man standing match for the title.
Okay.
Austin versus McMahon right now is your main event inside of a cage match.
Okay. And that's how Austin gets his title shot.
Yeah.
So that has to happen.
Yeah. And that title's got to go on somebody.
The title's got to go on somebody. So Vince is like, hey, you want your number one contendership? This is how you're going to keep it. You're going to go through the DX members or a DX member. And if we're doing one member, I say Triple H. And that's his obstacle to get to hold on to his number one contendership. Okay. And that would be, you could have that match before this, but then you could have that match here
at the same night.
The same night.
I was gonna ask because if you're just doing a rematch, does it matter who walks in as champion?
No.
At WrestleMania, as long as it's Shawn Michaels versus Stone Cold,
right?
That's the match you want to see. So then, if that's the case, then Mankind versus The Rock in the last man standing match, as good of a match as that was, gets pulled. Mm-hmm. And no one would know how good of a match it was because it wouldn't have happened. So don't bitch at us saying, you took away a great match. You wouldn't have known. So that's how fantasy booking works sometimes. And obviously that leads to WrestleMania 15. In one of your favorite cities, Philadelphia. I don't even need to break down the card. It would be Stone Cold versus Shawn Michaels.
Stone Cold versus Shawn Michaels.
Who wins?
You know what? That's a good question. All this time, I've been thinking too much about Shawn Michaels, and I didn't pick a winner. You know what? I hate to say it, but I think Shawn Michaels wins.
Yeah.
I think Shawn.
Why do you hate to say it though?
I hate to say it because it's one of those things that is, for me, it painfully makes sense.
Okay.
You have Austin go through his own road to the title, to getting the title back.
Yeah.
And he has a shot at it, and he's still white hot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But he loses at Mania. Because for me, I get to extend his hot streak and everything that goes along with it, merch sales and the whole nine. Because more often than not, heel or babyface, wrestling fans like to see the underdog go through that struggle,
right?
In order to get that title. That was part of the reason Stone Cold's first title against Shawn Michaels was such a huge hit, because of all the build up to it. So I would love for that build up to happen again. Now this time around, HBK's the champ. He walks out of WrestleMania 15 the champ. I'm not saying it has to be another year-long program. I wouldn't do that to anybody. That's just torture. But I would.
Tetsuya Naito show right there.
But I would definitely do it that way. I would have Austin lose so that he's got all the momentum in the world and all the popularity in the world. Now he's got to go through Shawn Michaels again.
Right.
So whether it be 1 month or SummerSlam or what have you, I wouldn't do it a year, but I would put a little more length to it. It's too great of an opportunity.
So one of the things I got to point out, St. Valentine's Day Massacre, if we keep the champion the way it was, it would have been Mankind versus Shawn Michaels. I think I said Shawn Michaels versus The Rock. This could make sense, too, because Vince McMahon could be pissed off at The Rock for losing to the likes of Mankind, therefore giving his title shot to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also kind of answered our own question of what happened with Triple H.
Yeah.
Because Shawn Michaels has now left D-Generation X. Let's fast forward a little bit. He wins. Austin goes on this crusade to win that title back. Eventually takes it. But before he takes it, let's remember Triple H didn't win that title. Didn't win the title at SummerSlam. Let's say he takes that SummerSlam in a match that featured Triple H as well. And you remember what happened at SummerSlam that year? Stone Cold comes in as champion, defends against Mankind and Triple H. Mankind wins the title, and then Triple H snaps and beats the ever-living shit out of Austin. Same situation here. Shawn Michaels comes in as champion, loses the title to Austin, and then Triple H snaps on his former mentor, his former best friend.
Yeah, it still makes sense.
Shawn Michaels versus Triple H. The rivalry that we really wanted. Because we kind of got, but I don't want to say kind of, we did get, but here we got guys in their prime.
Mm-hmm.
With all due respect to that rivalry in the early 2000s and to mid 2000s, there were some fantastic matches. But yeah, you get to see that Shawn Michaels hopefully does the right thing, gets Triple H over, and Triple H still becomes the game.
Yeah,
the cerebral assassin and all that stuff. You eventually you're going to see a DX reunion earlier if you guys are really counting on that. But,
yeah,
you'll get that, but it'll never be the same.
No, but that's the intent. You don't want it to be the same.
It'll never be the same. It'll never be Shawn Michaels as leader, or in this case Triple H as leader, but just a cohesive unit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that works out in that sense. So I feel better about Triple H if we play the roles correctly. That Triple H still can be somebody in the business, because man, it'd be really weird if the WWE or WF without the game. But then again, like you said,
well, no, I need that to happen too, because otherwise we wouldn't have the fine quality product that NXT is these days.
Yeah,
as odd as that may seem to some people.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to sit here and fast forward that long, but yeah, do we see NXT? Or does just Triple H become the independent guy?
Right.
Where he working for Ring of Honor.
Yeah. Again, a whole nother podcast.
I would love that. Yeah, I would totally book Triple H in Ring of Honor and maybe TNA. I don't know, the podcast. Next episode. Man, you and I talked about this in part one, that there's so much to talk about, and I know there's going to be some people that are going to say there's a lot of things we didn't hit on, and that's the whole point. So I'm going to put this out there right now. This is essentially part 2 of a part 1 episode when it comes to what ifs, because there's so many that are out there. We can't sit there and book 4 years worth. You're absolutely right. I'm like, yeah, we can. Let's do this.
Yeah. No.
Hold my beer that I don't drink. Yeah, it's completely difficult to do, because I would love to book 2000 and 2001, and maybe we do that in a future episode.
Maybe,
but for now, that's gonna have to do it for us, because I am all Shawn Michaels out.
Yeah, so am I.
And for those who had a problem with some of the things that we said in previous episodes,
we got 2 words for you.
Yeah. You know. This is a family show. We don't say bad words out here. But again, there's no hate for Shawn Michaels. He's the Heartbreak Kid. You gotta have love for him. You got hate for him?
No, I do. So the Paul, who I referred to in the first part of this episode,
okay,
huge HBK fan, absolutely did not like our our cover art for episode 35, where Shawn Michaels' eyes are talking to one another.
That's funny stuff.
It
Come
is
on.
funny. Like it or not, it was funny, Paul. But yeah, these 2 episodes dedicated to Paul. Thank you, Paul, for being such a devout listener. And yeah, so now you know what happens to Shawn Michaels if he didn't get hurt.
Essentially, history repeats itself in '99.
Yeah.
Only Shawn Michaels wins.
Yep.
I think that's what I love about that is that you have the ultimate quest to regain what you lost, almost like a fantastic journey. The only thing is that he works for the wrong company that doesn't have the patience to do that.
Yeah.
So,
which is my, in a nutshell, that's my beef with the WWE right now. There's no fucking patience.
Because that's the point I was trying to make is that Stone Cold versus Dude Love probably doesn't happen in April of '98. If Shawn Michaels doesn't get hurt, you're probably seeing Shawn Michaels versus Dude Love. And I don't want to go back and forth on that anymore. That's our take on it. I absolutely love Shawn Michaels. I've always pondered that myself, of that 4-year gap, of what would happen. And I think for the most part it was for the good. But I like to say that good could still happen had he stuck around. Obviously, the back didn't take 4 years to heal.
Yeah.
So, but, be that as it may, that is what happened. And we're left with just pondering what could have happened. And that's the 20 by 20 Ring Crew's take on what would happen. So, we'd love to hear your thoughts and how our fantasy booking was.
Yeah,
And,
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm going to hear about it. It's going to be interesting.
You think it's going to be good or bad?
I think it'll be a little bit of both, to be honest with you.
All right, I'm intrigued.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, when I book stuff, it makes sense to me. I like it, but that doesn't mean everybody else does.
Sure.
But
at least you're open about it because, I mean, with WWE, it's just like they just ignore the fact that you don't like it and just do it anyways. It's like, oh, you don't like it? Nah, you like it. You like it. You like it. Just keep watching. You'll like it. Nah, I don't. All right. Something else, Tom. All right. So, how can they find us and either give us a good remark or bitch and complain?
That's easy. Our home on the web is always at 20x20crew.com. That is where you can find anything and everything you want about us, previous episodes, links to social media, and the whole nine. We are on Instagram at 20x20crew. Also on Twitter at 20x20crew. Thank you for all the Twitter love. Facebook.com/20x20crew is our Facebook page. Facebook.com/groups/20x20talk will get you to our private Facebook group. Please stop by and say hi. Talk some booking, some fantasy booking with us. We're always up for some fantasy booking. And you can always write to us if you're an emailer. You can find us on 20x20crew@gmail.com for the time being. And then obviously you always have the rest of our fantasy booking, which we do exclusively on YouTube as the following contest, where we everything is exclusively booked on YouTube. So you can find us there at 20x20crew.com/podcast/YouTube. So there you go. Until next time, this has been Matt, and I am Joe, and we will see you in the ring.